As part of a research project, myself and my family, we spent 2 years in this northern part of India called, northern part of the subcontinent, sorry, called Punjab, which is split across India and Pakistan. And so we were in this place called Lahore in 2008. And this part of the subcontinent was split into two in 1947. And as part of that split, the Muslim population transferred from the east side to the west, and the Hindu and Sikh population transferred from the west to the east. So in 2008, when we were in Lahore, we came across Bhaijan. And those of you who kind of may have noticed, looked at his name, if you notice his name, it's Bhai Ghulam Muhammad Jang. And Ghulam Muhammad are sort of Muslim names, and Bhai and Jang are Sikh or Hindu appellations. And when I met this guy in 2008 in Lahore, we were at a concert at the Human Rights Commission in Lahore, which is a very nice theatre. My daughters, who were 4 and 7, were fighting with each other. They were terribly bored. There were speeches going on, and they were just like, you know, why have you brought us here? Parents, typical. And then Bhaijan came on, and he started singing, and immediately they went silent. And I'll show you what he was singing in a minute. And when they went silent, we all went silent because we were wondering, what is he singing? And what he was singing was verses from the Ard Granth, or the sacred texts of the Sikhs. Yet, Bhai Ghulam Muhammad Jang himself is a Shia. He would call himself a Muslim if you asked him what his religion was. And so this became a little bit of a puzzle, because how could someone who ostensibly Shia, and what that means, you know, we could debate or discuss, how was he singing these words? How did he know what these words were? You got to think now, this is 2008, we're in Pakistan, it's been 60 years since partition. There are maybe around 30,000 Sikhs now in the whole of Pakistan, and they're concentrated in a very small part of the country. Where did this guy come from? And actually it was a journey into finding out who he was, what he represented, and what kind of world he came from that led me to write this book. The book really is about his life. Well, in a sense, it's about what he represented. Not so much just his life on its own, but what the larger world which he came out of. And that's why, you know, today is a bit difficult actually, because he was so important for this journey that I undertook during my time there and subsequent, it's been like 7 years to coming to this, that now he's no longer there. In a sense, it's almost the death of a living archive. It's almost like we've lost the whole library. He was such an amazing character, and he represented this tradition. And I want to, I'm gonna just play a clip from a performance that he gave in our flat in Lahore, which actually is not, I've never shown this. This is what he was singing when my family heard him first perform, and my daughter's ears pricked up because he was saying Ikunkar Satnam Kartapur, which are the opening lines of the Granth, of the sacred Sikh. So my daughters knew this, and they were like, "What is going on? We're in Pakistan. Why is this guy singing this?" And this was really one of the issues that, again, inspired this book. I didn't know what he was doing. How was this possible that he could do this kind of what technically I'll call intertextuality, but you could say, why was he mixing up all these things which were supposed to be separate? Yeah? Where we're taught that, oh, this is one tradition, this is the Muslim tradition, or the Shia tradition, or this is the Sikh tradition, or this is the Hindu tradition, and here is this guy who's quite happy to just bring them all together in his performance. And actually all his performances, he brings in things from multiple sources, if you like, and multiple traditions. And I'm thinking that this guy, if you like, sorry, we'll go, where have I gone here? Yeah. So I was thinking that this guy, so these separate different traditions have separate different musical kind of roots as well as we understand them. And I always used to think, well, this guy, he's unique, right? His family used to play Kirtan, they used to play this music at the Golden Temple. So those of you who know nothing about Sikhs at all, most of you would have seen the Golden Temple and been associated with Sikhs. His family used to play there before 1947, before the partition. And actually it wasn't just his family. There were multiple families of musicians who were ostensibly Shia, who would call themselves Muslims if you asked them. They would celebrate Eid. They would have Muslim names, like Salam Muhammad, but they would play this music at the Golden Temple. So it wasn't just one group of people, and then it got me thinking, and it got me investigating. And the more I investigated, the more I started interviewing other musicians who we again associate with particular traditions. So I then went and interviewed Goals. So when we talk about Goali, we have this idea of this great tradition which is 1,000 years old, that starts in Delhi at Nizamuddin Aulia, and then there's this tradition of Goali, which all Goals somehow come from. Well, in Punjab, they don't all come from that tradition. Actually, most of them come out of the local musicians, and at some point, and this is where people might argue with me, but I want to argue that's okay. In the 20th century, 19th and 20th century, these musicians who would play at any shrine, with knowing most of the texts for each of the shrines, for a sant, for a Sufi, for a guru, these musicians were forced or understood the changing climate, and they started splitting off into distinct religious groups. So you then had Sikhs playing Kirtan, Muslims being Qawwals, and then Hindus playing Dharmaki. And actually the book is organised like this. I look at each of these genres of music and then I sort of unpack them and show that behind all of them, or what haunts them really, is this tradition, this Rababi tradition, or these hereditary musicians. And so that's why for me Babaji was so important for this book, because actually he's the inspiration behind it. And in one way, everybody when I was in Lahore used to say, oh, he's the last of his kind, he's unique. And actually, he is the last of his kind, and he is unique. But not because of of what he could do with the text. What he could do with the text. Lots of musicians used to have those skills. They don't have those skills anymore. They don't have access to different types of religious texts, if you like, or different forms of sacred music. And so in a way, his passing on is a real sort of loss for us, because he was an embodiment of a tradition that now it's very difficult to find. But some elements of that do still remain. And those elements of that still remain, we're going to kind of share with you now, with Rajveer coming and doing another piece from this sort of very popular, because we're in Bradford, Rajveer had to do Sefer Maluk, because otherwise we might have got, sort of banned or barred from ever coming again. And Sefer Maluk is what people might call a Sufi text. I would call it a sacred and secular text by Mir Muhammad Baksh. Sorry about my spelling there. Mir Muhammad Baksh, and this music and this text is very important in northern Punjab and Patwar and Azad Kashmir. And again, why I'm saying that the elements is that when people play Mir Muhammad, when Sher Khwans play Mir Muhammad, they bring in all sorts of other poetry. They don't stick to the book, if you like, or the text as it's written. They bring in all sorts of their own poetry, they bring in other people's poetry. So you do still have this, what I call intertextual tradition, alive, if you like, in the musical cultures across Punjab, in India and in Pakistan. But what you don't have is them crossing the boundaries, if you like. They don't, so the Sher Khwans, they won't sing, even if they do know it, they won't sing things by Guru Nanak. They won't sing things by Kabir. They'll sing things by the Sufis or by local poets. But so that aspect is lost. But you still see this element of intertextuality. And I'm going to ask Rajveer to come and play the tune which is normally associated with the Sefer Maluk. in the book, I argue that just at the time in which religious boundaries are being formed here, classical music as a boundary between folk music is also being formed. So why music is so important in terms of religion or in terms of the sacred and secular in my book is a lot to do with all of these things that are going on about 130 years ago in late 19th century, early 20th century Punjab. And one of the examples, and the book basically is full of kind of examples of these musical figures, apart from two kind of really boring chapters, which are full of theory, but the rest of it is full of examples to sort of show these kinds of people who, in some way, after partition, maintain certain kind of fluidity, and it also shows the absurdity of how people try and put them in boundaries. And one of the great kind of examples of that, and of course one of my favourite musicians also, is this guy Tufel Niazi. And his biography, his personal biography, again shows how musicians played or had the ability, regardless of what their personal identity might be or whatever their personal religious affiliation might be, they had the skills and the knowledge to play music in multiple traditions. And so Tufel Niazi is brought up in this place called Chiata, which is near Amritsar. As a child, he plays in a Sikh temple, in a Gurdwara. He plays kirtan. He's a Bukavji actually. He starts off learning a kettle drum. Then he leaves there because he has a fight with his uncle who he's playing with, and he goes to a place nearby, about 10 miles from there, and he joins something called a Gaushala group. And what is a Gaushala group? It's a protection of the cow group, which at that time was, they would go around and they would sing songs about protecting the cow, Gai Mata, which is again a symbol of the kind of the sort of very important symbol in kind of contemporary Hinduism. He left that and then became a Nautanki. A Nautanki is a theatre performer, and actually, if you his videos are all over YouTube, and this one that I've taken a clip, sort of a snippet from. His eye movements are incredible. In fact, just as incredible as his voice, because he understood theatre as well as singing. What happens to him after partition? He moves to Pakistan, and in Pakistan, he's heralded as the greatest folk singer of Pakistan. He's given a TV show. In the 1980s, he goes to India and he gets awarded the best classical singer because he learnt in his childhood, he learnt from the Maharaja of Kapurthala. And actually, if you listen to his music, and I've got to plug the book, haven't I? There's a YouTube sort of website associated with the book, and the musical analysis in the book is very much due to Rajveer, who is kind of one of the multiple co-authors in here, but he's very, very important for the musical analysis in this book. And when we sat and listened to Tufel Niazi singing, I've forgotten but when we sat and analysed one of Tufel Niazi's tracks, why doesn't it come back to me right now, which is about 16 minutes long, Rajveer was like, well, he's doing his own thing. I can't classify this music. Don't ask me. That's right, wasn't it? Don't ask me to tell. Don't tell me. Ask me to say what he's doing. And he would mix styles. He couldn't fix it. But this division between Pakistan and India in how they appreciated him is also one of the stories in the book. And I actually, I kind of sort of turn things on their heads quite a lot in the book, because in many ways, someone like Baichand, someone like Tufel Niazi would not be allowed to exist in India after partition. Because in India after partition, musicians were quickly slotted into categories. So either you'll do kirtan and you're a Sikh musician and you don't do secular music of any sort, or you're a Qawwal, or you're a classical musician. So these slots, whereas in Pakistan, because the state really didn't care about music, it didn't have that kind of capacity to do this, actually these figures just carried on playing their music. And so the other reason why Bhaichand existed actually in Pakistan, rather than you might have thought, well, there must be lots of musicians like this in India, is actually no, the Pakistani state neglected music and therefore allowed musicians to be, whereas the Indian state didn't. So this is a kind of funny inversion, because everybody thinks that, oh well, if you're a musician, India is the best place to go, there is so much music, there's so much money, all of this is true. But in a sense, it's commodified, it's become very market-driven. And so I kind of do a lot of playing with this in terms of the distinctions that we make. I'm going to come back to Tvel Niazi because that's my only link back to what you're going to play. But I kind of want to end by saying that yes, I am super romantic about all of this. Yes, you know, there's a tear comes to my eye when Rajveer plays this. And being a sociologist, I can't help but kind of also not be romantic and say that while Bhai Ghulam Muhammad was an amazing character, and you know, while he was recognised, if you like, in the 2000s, particularly, you know, he did travel to India. He did get huge acclaim there in terms of his musical tradition. You know, women are still not allowed to, you know, sing in his family, even though all the women can sing and they all know the text from the shabads or from the tradition. And women are not allowed to sing kirtan in the Gold Temple, so in the sort of central Sikh shrine. So even though I'm talking a lot about boundary crossing, there are still boundaries fixed in place. So one of them is gender, and the other one is caste. And again, one of the reasons why musicians affiliated to particular spiritual leaders or to particular traditions was to try and elevate them outside of their particular status within the caste system. So you become a Granthi, or you become a Gwal, or you become a Rababi, as a way of escaping from a particular status in society. And even though I think this association did kind of enable musicians to be elevated to some extent, it didn't break the system, right? It didn't, and again, you see that a lot in Pakistan, more than you would see in India, because those musicians relied on those kinds of relationships to eat, right, to feed themselves. So while I'm really romantic, and while, you know, Bhaichand is in my heart, you know, an incredibly important figure, I also recognise that, you know, that he socially his life wasn't great. That where they lived in Lahore, they couldn't play music. They didn't have any musical instruments in their house because they were scared of what the people around them would think about them. So you know, it's not that these societies in which people live are that easy for them to carry on with their traditions. I'm going to return to Tvel Niazi because, in a way, he does allow me to segue into the last musical piece that we're going to hear. And then afterwards, hopefully we'll have a bit of time for questions. Tvel Niazi is very well known for... why can I not remember any tracks today? Ranja Jogi Banaya, right? With this track called Ranja Jogi Banaya. Jogra Banaya, thank you. Someone was going to help me, I was hoping. And that text that he's singing is about it's very important in terms of this musical tradition as an alternative, if you like, to the formal religious traditions. And that alternative has its own text, and that text is called Veer Ranja, which is a 18th century, very long poem written in a kind of in a poetic form called a kissa. And the famous version of this poem is by a guy called Varinder S. And that text is very, very central to this musical world in which boundaries are crossed over. Because in the text itself, the text starts off by inverting our normal understanding of the relationship between man and God. So man is supposed to be devoted to God. We're supposed to love God in the kind of classical renditions of that relationship. And in Veer Ranja, he starts off by saying that God is the first lover, and the first person God loves is the prophet. So it's not man loving God, it's God loving man. and not man letting God, it's the other way around. And so the whole of Varinder does play with these kinds of inversions, and it's a very, very important text, unfortunately not available in English. But, you know, when I get older, I'm more older, that is one of the one's life's projects, is to try and kind of render that in some way into something intelligible. So we're going to end with Varinder.